Every generation believes it has finally figured out what intelligence looks like, and every generation is wrong in a new way. We live in a time where intelligence is often mistaken for certainty, for speed, for credentials, for the ability to dismantle an argument in public. And somewhere along the way, a quiet assumption took root that religious, traditional, or conservative people must simply be less intelligent. But what if that belief says more about the mind doing the judging than the minds being judged? This question sits beneath a famous cultural tension, the long, uneasy conversation between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, not as rivals, but as symbols of two very different ways of knowing. From the rationalist perspective, intelligence looks like clarity. It looks like skepticism, abstraction, and freedom from superstition. It can be measured, tested, quantified. IQ scores, logical reasoning, evidence-based belief. From this view, religious faith appears as a cognitive shortcut, belief without proof, tradition without justification. And in a modern world shaped by science and technology that can feel not just outdated, but dangerous. Neuroscientifically, this mode of intelligence lives in the brain's spotlight, the prefrontal cortex doing what it does best: analyzing, separating, questioning, refining. It is a powerful light, but every spotlight creates shadows. Jordan Peterson pushes back not by rejecting science, but by widening the frame. He asks a different question. What if intelligence is not only about abstract reasoning, but about survival across time? What if religious traditions, myths, and moral narratives are not signs of stupidity, but compressed forms of psychological wisdom shaped by generations of trial and error, encoded in stories, rituals, values, and norms that helped human beings cooperate, endure suffering, and orient themselves toward meaning? To dismiss this as unintelligent may itself be a failure of perception, because when we reduce intelligence to metrics alone, we confuse measurement with understanding. IQ tests can predict certain outcomes such as academic performance, pattern recognition, and abstract problem solving, but they say very little about emotional regulation, moral intuition, or the ability to build and sustain communities over time. And here, the brain reveals something uncomfortable. When humans feel threatened intellectually, socially, or culturally, the amygdala sounds its alarm, and the nervous system looks for safety. One of the fastest ways the mind creates that safety is by claiming superiority. Contempt becomes a sedative. Reducing other people to stupid, backward, or irrational is not always a sign of intelligence. Often, it is a sign of fear. Fear of chaos. Fear of uncertainty. Fear that one's own worldview might not be complete. Carl Jung warned that what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves does not disappear. It becomes the shadow. And the shadow of intelligence is arrogance. In polarized cultures, this shadow grows quickly. Disagreement is no longer interpreted as difference, but as deficiency. Political opponents become cognitively inferior, and moral disagreement is reframed as low intelligence. Intelligence becomes a weapon instead of a tool for understanding. And what gets lost is the possibility that multiple forms of intelligence can coexist, that rational skepticism and symbolic meaning might serve different functions in the human psyche, that science explains how the world works, while myth and tradition often answer why suffering is bearable and why life feels worth continuing at all. The deeper danger is not faith or skepticism. It is the belief that one cognitive style has earned the right to rule all others. Because civilizations are not sustained by intellect alone, they are sustained by shared values, trust, restraint, and meaning. Things that cannot be easily measured but are deeply real to the nervous system. True intelligence may not be the loudest voice in the room. It may not be the fastest rebuttal or the sharpest dismissal. It might be the capacity to hold multiple ways of knowing without contempt, to recognize that logic without humility becomes brittle, that tradition without reflection becomes rigid, and that wisdom often lives in the tension between the two. So the question is not whether religious or conservative people are less intelligent. The real question is quieter and far more unsettling. What kind of intelligence do you value, and what might you be blind to because of it?